Hi there. This is the first album by late 80s pop star Martika. Martika. Um, you probably would know her from the, I think it was a number one single, or at least number one in the US, also number one in New Zealand. Toy Soldiers was her big hit, and still you still hear played today. That's what she's most known for. But this album came out in 1988, late 1988, and did most of its work, most of its sales in '89. But anyway, before I talk about that, I'll talk about the actual purchase of this. So I got this secondhand. Would have been about 3 years ago. It says there's a sale price Z or Z. I can't remember. I always say this, don't I? But it's also yeah. I'd say it was pretty cheap because a Martika CD is not the kind of thing that's going to be flying off the shelves. Secondhand Martika CD, but this was purchased at Real Groovy Records. Actually, might have been at the upstairs place, Dingbats. So this, I think I've talked about this before, but Real Groovy Records is a music shop. It's the biggest music shop in Auckland, and it's a mixture of mostly secondhand, but also some new stuff. It's been going for as long as I've been alive, and it's moved a few different places. But the place it was previous to where it is now, it was they had the one place downstairs, and then they had a kind of separate little place upstairs called Dingbats, which was the really cheap stuff, cheap CDs and mostly vinyl. And I think I got this there, and I would guess usually I don't really pay over $5 or $6 when I'm buying secondhand things from the sale price at that place. So I would have guessed it would have been around that, between as low as two and as much as six. Looking at the condition, I would say that this was originally purchased at the time of release, around late 88, 89, maybe 90. Um, you can tell there from the CD it's not any kind of reissuing or anything like that. Don't know. I don't actually think it has been reissued. Why would it be? Um, and the condition's fine for something from 1988, almost 30 years. No, over 30 years. Yeah, I'm not great at maths. What's that? 35 years. Geez, that's crazy, yeah. Um, the paper, that's kind of weird. The outside paper is kind of the typical glossy CD booklet paper. Inside, it's kind of like this, what's like parchment paper type stuff with the lyrics on it. There she is, Martika. Now, one thing I was surprised by doing just a little bit of reading, um, she was only 19 years old when she made this. And I don't know why that surprised me, because um, a lot of pop artists are quite young and were back then. But I don't know, maybe her voice didn't always really come across to me as young. But then after I read that, then when I was listening through the album, I was thinking, actually, yeah, I can hear the youth in her voice. So yeah, she was a young, relatively young woman when she made this. We can see there the thanks she gives to all of my fans. Well, she wouldn't have many fans at this stage, would she? Because this was her first album. She'd been a child actress. Maybe that's what she's talking about. In the 80s, she was in a show called Kids Incorporated, which never made it over here, or certainly not while I was alive, because I can't remember it. And maybe they're the fans. She means to all the fans for their support. I wouldn't be here without you. One more word of special thanks to Spirit and my guardian angel. You helped me find my way home. This album is dedicated to Gil and Marta Marrero. So that's her birth name is, or her family name is Marrero. I can't remember her first name. It's not. I don't think it's Martika. Or maybe it is Martika. But hang on. No, it doesn't say here. I thought I had something here that would say. But it's I think those are her parents. Her parents came from Marta. Her name's Marta Marrero. Marta Marrero. Her parents are from Cuba originally, and they fled, or I don't know if is fled the right word. Maybe they just left of their own accord without anyone chasing them. You can see their producer Michael J and engineered Michael McDonald. Not that Michael McDonald, unfortunately. That would have been interesting. But Michael J. You if you look at the songwriting credits, which are I think in here, but I was looking on Wikipedia. Oh yeah, he's involved with a lot of the songwriting as well. He gets credits on almost every song he wrote together, either with another co-writer or with her. She actually has quite a few credits as well herself, so that's good to see. But she she made this album, and this did pretty well. It sold, I think, I would say a couple of million worldwide, and Toy Soldiers went number one in a few countries. Um, what would you say the sound of this? Like I said, this came out in 88, 88, 89. It has absolutely has the pop sound of that era. And it's hard to describe it, but if you hear it, it's instantly recognizable. Imagine a movie, it doesn't have to be a particular good movie, any movie uh, aimed at teens and young adults that came out in the late 80s, that same period, let's say 88, 89, 87. I'd say especially a period, because 86 is a little bit too early, but about 87, 88, 89 to maybe the very first half of 90. But by then, starting to change again. So it's kind of like a 2.5, 3 year period. Imagine a movie, maybe not a huge blockbuster, but the movie is set in I don't know, the beach in California or in Florida or something like that. And I don't know, the kids are hanging out at the beach. When the young adults are hanging out at the beach, and it's just about their lives. Sorry, this sounds like a terrible movie. Anyway, if you imagine a soundtrack to that movie, the soundtrack you're imagining would be the instrumental music from this album, maybe without Martika's voice over it. Uh, it really it's it's just so instantly recognizable. So it places it in that time so precisely, that 1988, 89, 87, 88, 89, the sound, very everything is synth. No, I would doubt anything was. Well, I'm sure, of course, there were instruments, but if they can use a synth version of the instrument, they absolutely will. Don't think there's any live drums. It sounds like it's all drum machine. But in saying that, it's not a bad album. I'm not saying that. It's what it is. It's I guess a kind of almost teen pop record. The first three songs, we got If You're Tarzan, I'm Jane, Cross My Heart, More Than You Know. More Than You Know was also a single, and I think that did relatively well as well. I think that kind of went top 20. You might have heard that if you ever get around to listening to this. Cross My Heart, which was interesting, is that song was written, I think that was written by Michael J as well, and released by another pop group the same year. So there was a British pop group, like a kind of boy band or girl band, and they released a version of Cross My Heart the same year that Martika released it on her album. Which seems, you'd think if the songwriter was going to sell the song, there would be some proviso that you wouldn't be able to, you know, give it to one person and let them release, or at least give a bit of time before someone else releases. It kind of seems like it's like cutting someone off the knees there. Um, then we get number 4, Toy Soldiers. So Toy Soldiers, at least up until this point, the first 3 songs, very high energy, bright, shiny, happy pop music of that time. Toy Soldiers, and I think probably the reason why it's stood the test of time, and it's kind of considered a song representative of that era, but still transcends that era, is because one, it uses it's not major, it's minor key, and that's what gives it that kind of, and also the kids choir, the kids vocals give it this kind of I don't know. I'm not going to say like haunting, although I did see that word to describe it. I wouldn't say haunting's going a bit far, but it kind of gives it this a certain like kind of like um, sadness or what's the word? Not real, but honesty or yeah. Sounds like she means it when she's singing it. And apparently she wrote the lyrics, and it's about drug addiction. One of her friends had an addiction problem. I guess growing up in an entertainment industry, that might be something you'd come across. And she wrote the song for that person and for that subject. And then I guess maybe more recently, and what people maybe know more for is that it was sampled by Eminem. I actually can't remember the song. I'm not the hugest Eminem fan, to be honest. I listened a lot to his second album. Was it the Marshall Mathers EP? EP, LP. But everything after that, I haven't really listened to much at all. I have heard the song that he sampled, but I don't actually know the name of it. What is that? Okay, the song was later sampled by rapper Eminem. Okay, like Toy Soldiers. Well, there we go. Featuring Martika as the chorus singer. Now, in the Martika version, like I said, there's kind of a child choir or kids' voices singing the chorus, step by step, that part. Apparently, one of them is Fergie from Black Eyed Peas, because apparently she was in the same TV show as Martika. And so when Martika left that and went to become a recording artist, and she needed some child singers for the chorus of the song, she goes, "Oh, I know some kids who can sing. I used to be in a TV show with them." And one of them was Fergie. So that's a little bit of trivia for you, if you even need to know. Um, what else we got here? You got me into this. Yeah, that's okay. Like again, that's kind of in the vein of the first three. Number 6. This is kind of, I think, the low point of the album. She does a cover version of Carole King's "I Feel the Earth Move." Where if you're going to do a cover version of a song, such a classic song, you got to really be offering something. Not even necessarily something different, but something. She isn't. That's an awful version. It's got that same super super, artificial production and instrumentation of this time period, together with her vocals, which her vocals aren't bad, but they don't have a lot of soul, let's say. And to be honest, I don't even really like that Carole King song, but it's part of like the canon, of music, that whether you know Carole King or not, you know that song. And actually, the Carole King's version does have a lot of kind of, I don't know, maybe it's the use of the piano in it or something like that, that it has a lot more human feeling to it. It's just leagues above and better than this version. So she should have given that one a miss. If I was her producer, I would have said, okay, Martika, maybe let's go for something different, something more in your range. Then we get to Water, which actually is a bit of a high point, I think. Water, uh, again, has got a different feeling than tracks 1, 2, 3, and 5. It's got a more of a not so much of a minor key sadness as Toy Soldiers, but just something a little bit different, more plaintive maybe. She also sings a little bit in Spanish, so I assume she maybe spoke Spanish a little bit at home because her parents are Cuban heritage, and you know I assume maybe they spoke Spanish at least some. When she speaks Spanish, when she sings in Spanish, I don't know. It seems like almost she's more comfortable in singing in Spanish. I'm not saying that. I don't even think it was her first language or anything. I don't even know if she's bilingual, but it was just interesting. Maybe it's just the way that Spanish rolls off the tongue, that it's a more beautiful sounding language than English. Being native speakers of English, as most of us are, who I assume are watching or listening to this, and myself, We don't really understand what English sounds like to non-English speakers, but it's not a pretty sounding language at all. It's quite abrasive and clunky. They say we eat our words, you know, chocolate literature, especially being a New Zealander, we really aren't great on the pronunciation. We rarely mumble and eat the words, whereas the Spanish would say literatura or chocolate or literature, chocolate. So maybe that's why when she sings in Spanish, it sounds like I don't know, it's like a butterfly opening her wings. It sounds like Then what else I got? It's not what you're doing. See if I care. Those two are kind of the same vein. I think there's it was both. The one part thing about Water I didn't like, and also maybe one of these other songs, is it has something I can't stand as synth horns, synthesizer horns, like a synthesizer trumpet, and they have that instantly like gives it this low budget feeling whenever I hear synth horns. And one of those songs has got that, and it just kind of throws me out of it. Alibi, the last song, or Alibis, that has a cool, like a synth bass intro. Do, 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 do. But then it kind of just goes into the kind of feeling the rest of them. So, for what it is, a late 80s pop record, dance pop record, I think it's pretty good. I like that feeling of things because I guess I've said before that they even say like kind of site or brain development specialists or whatever say that there's certain periods of your youth, of your development, not just one particular time, but a few different periods where things that you're exposed to during that time have a larger and more lasting impression upon you. And I can't remember if one of them apparently is around 7 years old, and then the other one in your teens, like your early teens and your mid teens. So I was in 1988, I was around 7. And it seems that music, because what I was looking at before I made this video, I was looking at the number one singles, Billboard singles from 86, 87, 88, and 89. And it's just amazing, A, how many classic songs are in there. And B, how many of them, when I imagine them, have that similar sound. And I think the song that really captures it best is that Madonna song. I can't think of the name. Cherish the. What's that song? Hang on one second. Okay, it's called Cherish. That song. Now, I don't know what year that came out, but I'm pretty sure it was around 87, 88, 89. And that song kind of almost has that sound that is captured on this and a lot of the other ones. That's the kind of the upbeat, happy end. And then there's more kind of one that's got a cooler. I mean, I don't mean cool as in hip cool. I mean as in cooler, as a colder feeling, like Toy Soldiers or like Belinda Carlisle's "Heaven Is a Place on Earth." So many of those songs they have. I've talked before about things that I feel kind of like they get into your blood, and it's not even like necessarily I like that kind of music, but it's something about it that kind of connects into some kind of firing in my brain that must be from when I listening to the radio when I was around 7 or 8 years old, or just hearing songs just from being out and about, and you kind of still connect to them now. She made another album after this, which I think did pretty well, but maybe not as successful, but still pretty successful. And I think she worked with Prince on her second album on some songs. Then she walked away. After her second album, she was burnt out, and so she just decided she was over it. And in the music industry, especially at that time, especially in that kind of artist, she was on a major label, and if you get off the conveyor belt or the treadmill or whatever the analogy you want to use, you can't get back on. They're pretty unforgiving. and I think she needed some time to kind of recuperate or get her head straight, and maybe later on she did want to kind of get back into it, but by that time, things had passed her by, and she couldn't. But I kind of admire, that she did do that, because how many people don't do that and push themselves to breaking point and do break, you know, through substance problems or worse, taking their own lives or just going off the deep end and mental illness but yeah, she's still around. She still, I think, dabbles in music, but obviously not to the point where she's releasing new things a lot or anything like that. Anyway, yeah, just a kind of I guess a blast from the past and something a little bit different. Martika's debut album, Martika. Thank you.